Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited today because I have Dave Killingsworth on the Skype from Solar Flare Games. Dave has a litany of Kickstarter projects and now working on Robotech. So lots of questions about how you got to where you are and just being in Kickstarter for so long. But first off, say hello, Dave.
Hello, everybody.
And you and I first interacted, I believe, when you were kickstarting Dumpster Brawl. You go through your whole sort of lineup, but, you know, like anyone else, said, hey, Ed, would you review this, I believe, which I did. And then since then, we've been in touch pretty regularly over the last 3 or 4 years, whatever it's been, as different Kickstarters have come up, different questions, comparing notes, and all of the like, and I've certainly met you at a number of cons. But for those who aren't as familiar, I mean, you started super indie and super small.
Yep.
Can you take us through like your early campaigns and just sort of how you went about it?
So the very first game we did was a game called Thrash Car. It was very much a just screw your neighbor game, and one of those first ones that you do that you look back on now and man, I would really do that differently, because it was, hey, throw it up on Kickstarter, it'll be great, everybody will love it. Doesn't work that way. And then we learned lessons from that. We went smaller, went to Dumpster Brawl when I met you, and then we started evolving the games to be, they're always meant to be family. Solar Flare Games is about family because when I got married, I inherited 3 stepdaughters, and the gaming was about getting them to sit at the table with us, do some development, play some games, put the cell phones down, and so that's always been our guiding light. And then so we came up with Dead Run, Nightmare Forest Dead Run. Then we did Lords of Rock, followed by a second Nightmare Forest game, which we wanted to not reskin. We wanted to go from an every man for himself to a co-op, so that it wasn't just a reskin. And then we did Archmage Origins, and then we tried doing the miniatures game, which didn't work out, which was
right. Well, so you rattled through that pretty quickly, which is fine. But just to scope it out, right? So you're talking about Thrash Car. You know, these initial campaigns you're doing are raising between, it looks like, $20,000, 200 backers.
Yeah.
You know, these are small campaigns. And one of the interesting things about you is as you're working on these campaigns, as far as I'm concerned, a couple things happens. One, you're clearly getting better at it. I thought they just look better and better, with Lords of Rock sort of looking spectacular. I still consider that game to just be like one of the coolest freaking games. But also you started getting this sort of Amerithrash. You were getting known for these games that were just very sort of focused on the fun, like play focused, maybe not as refined, but like a lot going on. And then you were rolling on and building on that. And then, you know, as you get in, I mean, Lords of Rock, I mean, Nightmare Forest was 380 backers. Lords of Rock was almost 1,000. And you know, you were steadily climbing and building a brand for you and your company and an audience. So 2 questions. One, so before we get to the sort of let's talk about the miniatures campaign, but when we get back to just that process, as a small publisher, how did you sort of keep the momentum and energy to sort of build and grow small?
I have a regular job that I do every day that's my livelihood. Approaching this as something I do as a side business that I just wanted to have fun. It's to really give you a cheesy answer, Edo, this is my form of art. My job is data crunching all day long, and this is fun. I get to take the data crunching to do the math underneath, but it's an art expression. It's a way to build something that people will go out, have fun with, have a good time with, and that's really what we've always been after. So that's what keeps me going, is when I run into somebody at the convention, they're like, oh my God, I love that game. I like Dumpster Brawl. I have guys that come up to me and go, I play this with my kids all the time. We absolutely love it. And that's what keeps us going.
Awesome. I mean, that's a great answer, man. That's a great answer. and so as most of these games made it through to retail, right? Like, did you get it? who are you working with? How do you get to retail? What's your path there? Which titles sort of made it all the way and which didn't?
The first two, Thrash Car and Dumpster Brawl, didn't. Just didn't really know what we were doing at that time, and then somebody referred me to Impressions. I actually think it might have been you, if I remember right.
It's quite possible.
And I reached out to Aldo, and over the course of 6 or 8 months, about every 2 months, I'd go, "Hey, do you have any room for a new guy?" No. "Do you have any room for a new guy?" No. And then after the second game, we started working on Lords of Rock. He finally said, "You know what? You've been consistent, you've been persistent, and you obviously really give a crap about what you're doing." And we struck a deal, and Dead Run went into distribution. We actually had to do a reprint of that, so that was the first thing we had to reprint. Lords of Rock is pretty much sold out completely. And then Alien Invasion's doing well, and Archmage Origins, and then the little stuff, the little stuff continues to move, but it's little stuff. And now we're on to Robotech. So
yeah, well, and obviously I've worked with Impressions for some time. I like Aldo a lot. It is. Some people need to be persistent, right? A lot of times that rejection comes because he has a lot of product, he's got a lot of clients, and he only has so much bandwidth. But there are times when he frees up, or he's looking to grow, or he needs more things in his lineup. And as you grow, your portfolio changes too if you continue to work at it. So I mean, I think that's just I've always liked your story because of how sort of brick by brick, game by game, level up by level up you went, and that has sort of been your track into the industry. Now let's talk about Dawn of the Archmage, because I think there are a lot of people who make smaller games and always are like shaking their fist at the miniature games and those big campaigns, and everyone's like, throw miniatures in the game and it'll fund. And I mean, there's some little bits of truth there, perhaps, but mostly not. And so what you had done first off is you had sort of split it out, and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this Archmage Origins like card game, and it's going to like lead into the other one, which I actually thought was a pretty good way to both leverage the IP, sort of build an audience, get another game out there, and ultimately Archmage Origins would become a very powerful stepping stone to Robotech, which we can talk to when we get there. But so with Dawn of the Archmage, you have this pretty monstrous miniature campaign, and take us through and what what happened and what the folly was there.
So we launched it twice. The first time we thought we had a really good lead into it. We had a lot of really positive response. People liked the miniatures, and in the end, what really everybody wants is maximum amount of miniatures out of the gate. But being a small company trying to do something big, as a developer yourself, doing sets of miniature castings and stuff can be the molds are very expensive. And what we realize is a lot of places who can do this really well kind of don't roll the mold cost into the Kickstarter. They just know they're going to kind of eat that and hope it goes big. And I'll be honest, as a single small person company, I wasn't willing to risk $40,000 or $50,000 of my own money on the fact that hopefully the Kickstarter would go big enough to cover what I personally invested. And so we staged the Kickstarter in a very honest way, which was, we can give you 20 minis, but each team's minis are the same. And then as we fund, we can unlock multiple designs as it covers the true cost of the Kickstarter. And we were very open up front. People really appreciated it. And then people who wanted it really wanted it. But then we had Green Horde, the Game of Thrones, and like 2 other minis all kind of came out at the same time. And there is only so much money to go around, but I also own the fact that mine wasn't as dynamic or as big as people would want for $70. And as wonderful as the mini designs were, as great as the art was, it was also an arena combat game, and those are very hit or miss, I have found over time as well.
Yeah, no, balancing that all out is a huge challenge. Like the expense, custom dice might have an expense or certain die cuts, but those are, $1,000, couple $1,000, maybe you can just sort of roll it in or figure it out or you like offset it. But when it comes to these big miniature campaigns, there's the creation of the asset, the 3D development, as well as those huge molds and the commitment, and also looking at how much product you're going to push through them, right? And so it's a major challenge. I mean, I'm always impressed when somebody comes in and takes on minis who hasn't before, right? So there's just a learning curve there, and presumably, I mean, to get even where you got to, you had to unfortunately put out money. I mean, presumably that was an initial cost, maybe not for the molds, but for the everything in front of that ultimately, maybe in the future you'll use, but for now or for those campaigns was a challenge. And it is a constant pressure in odd ways, so I have Skulk Hollow, which is the big monster versus the Foxen game, and it's coming to Kickstarter later in October, but every other person, not every other, but like 1 out of 5 people playing be like, oh, these would be awesome miniatures. And, in some ways it's like, I'm sure somebody could make awesome miniatures. Like, I don't doubt there's cool miniatures. But, like, on one hand, it's sort of like, I think I can make some pretty cool meeples. Like, I think I got cool meeples down, and there's a lot to love about those. And I like in some ways it's like, I actually like it that way. But also, it's sort of like you'd put all this weight on a game that really isn't that type of experience necessarily, and then it just it's like this isn't meant to be a $90 game.
It doesn't have the foundation under it to support a mini load in a logical sense, so to speak. Yeah,
for a small person, right? If you're a company that does miniatures all the time, and you have the team, and you have the artists, and like. You don't have the molds anyway, but you got everything else sort of queued up, then the risk and cost is way low. You just factor it in, like a company that does these all the time. Yeah. But I do think it is a big hurdle to take on if you haven't. Not to say you shouldn't try.
Yeah.
And you do run up as the other thing I think is worth note is everyone complains about big campaigns ruining their launches and that kind of thing, and there's a big campaign every other week. But I do think there's something to be said about like having a miniature game and going against one of the epic must-have miniature campaigns is rough. Because those other campaigns are asking for hundreds of dollars from people, and I think it is hard to go against a monster campaign.
I do believe if you do small stuff like you have done and like what I do, when your Kickstarter price is $20 or $25, a big campaign probably isn't going to crush you because you have a different type of target audience for the most part, and people who are dropping $200 or $300 on mini campaign, if they really like what you're doing, the extra $25 for your game. I mean, I found that during other campaigns. We did Lords of Rock. Big campaigns were out, didn't touch us because people they love the theme, they love the humor, they love the art, and if you have something good, people will come get it if they know it's there. Taking on minis is just so we know. So I was going to share with you is I'm working out a deal with Tom Anders over at Impact Miniatures. So even though the minis we didn't turn it into a game, we're going to work out something with him so he can run a campaign. So the people who love the minis can at least get the minis.
Yeah, well, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I mean, I think I almost a number of times I considered during Legendary Creatures, which has some awesome meeples, but I only have 4. We did like 30 amazing meeples, like best in class meeples, which were like part of the design process of like coming up with what animals we wanted. In our game, the meeples were sort of abstracted from cards, so it was like we just need a set of 4, but they could be elementals, they could be animals, they could be objects. Like there was a so from a meeple creation standpoint, it was like, hey, just Helen, have fun, and then we'll pick a set. Yeah. And like, so I was even thinking about, hey, how, perhaps there's a way to like do a meeple collection type thing and do it as a little pack. So I think those opportunities come up. Okay, but so let's go. So small guy making games, building an audience, getting better, building an audience, doing this big swing, whiffing a little bit, and then but learning a whole lot, and then coming back. Talk us through how you then go to Robotech, which is a licensed product, and didn't have a Kickstarter, right? Or did it?
No, it didn't. We went straight to manufacturing.
So straight to manufacturing, straight to retail. So that's like a huge shift. And in some ways in my head, I'm like, man, you went from one risk to another risk. Like,
yeah.
So,
my wife and I still talk about that risk.
Yeah.
So it was, we took the beating on, and it feels like a beating. I think you've done enough of these, the feeling, and anybody who watches your channel knows. Anytime you throw that campaign up there of any sort, you're holding your baby up and going, please, everybody, love my baby. And when people don't love your baby, you feel bad. And it took us a while because we did invest a lot into the sculpting and the art. I mean, it was almost 30% complete art. And so we backed all down. I've since reused the art other places and stuff, but it was stop. Really look at what went wrong, and I think that's where a lot of people really have to think about what they're doing is what was our failure. And in the end, I think a lot of it was I have this big fan base, but they're used to $25 and $30 games. And we said, oh, by the way, here's our $70 game to people who want light, small games. So we stopped, we sat down and had a meeting, my wife and I and my two friends who do a lot of the development work and the testing work with me. And how did we miss? And our eyes got big, and we wanted to had this idea and put it out there. And then, so we decided to go back to what we were good at, which was small and light. And we had this concept of, we had done Utter Terror, which is the small two aliens capturing cows. And then we went to Archmage Origins, and we evolved that mechanic to, as far as I can tell, I invented for the first one. And then we evolved it. And then we go, what can we do to make this? Let's keep it small, but let's take a step in mechanics. Let's really take eye on making something strategic and tactical, because we've never done that. It's always been happy, fun, dice chucky, let's go have a good time with our family. And I wanted to part of it was I wanted to show people I could do that. I just had chose not to up to this point. And so we sat down, we worked on it, and then we go, well, this needs a theme. This needs a skin. And then we started going, well, who could we talk to? And Robotech had just started going on Netflix again, and I remembered it's what hooked me on anime in the mid-'80s. It has a very dear place in my heart, and I turned to my guys, I said, how fun would it be for me to make something that live in this universe that I have this just gushing love over because of part of my childhood? And I sent an email off to the company, and they called me 2 days later, and we worked out a deal. It was the most surreal, week of my life, as we had this great mechanic and this great concept, just didn't have anything to dress it in. And nice thing about taking an IP is all the clothing is already provided. You know exactly what things are going to look like.
There's a lot of work there to get that right. You gotta
you
gotta make sure everybody's happy when you're doing with the brand, the franchise.
Yeah, there's a lot of email. Yeah. So you're just like, and that's not necessarily the experience everyone has when trying to get an IP, and just to go into that, presumably in your email, you said something like, hey, I'm Skullflare Games. We have 7 titles. We've published on Kickstarter. We're in retail. We're available in these stores. We have a game mechanic that we think is perfectly suited for your IP. I mean, is that basically how the email went, give or take? Yeah, it was a little bit of, hey, we're a small company. We've got a really great idea that we think will help recover from the Palladium incident on Kickstarter, and it's small, it's light, it'll be fast for us to get out. And here in the selling point they've told me was the last 2/3 of the thing, which was explaining why I was doing it as a fan and not a business person. And that really seemed to be something they appreciated, because I am one of their fandom, and I wanted to make something for love, not money. Money was secondary with this project. I wanted to obviously build my brand and keep building games and make money at it, but I was so excited to do something in this realm, and that's what's kind of sold them.
Sure, though, and that's a wonderful thing, and it really is. But presumably, and if you're uncomfortable, let me know. But when it comes, so if you didn't do Kickstarter, right, somebody put up some amount of money that's more than $1,000,
Yep.
less than $50,000, but like in there to print and do all this stuff. Was that out of your pocket, or did they support you with that?
Oh no, I paid them up front for the license, and then I paid to do the production. No, they don't. They don't help.
My gushing, fandom, but I'm also willing to put up this large subsets of money to take this on. So there was also a considerable business risk with your fandom.
Yes.
And so like I don't want to get into anything that's specific to contracts or otherwise, but just in terms of so how many? So you did the run. It's through. So you have a track into. So you have a brand, and you have a route into retail. So that's both powerful.
Correct.
And Robotech. I mean, I did a preview of it. Everyone's welcome to check it out. I like the game. And you how so is it available now?
Yeah, actually,
if I went to a store.
Street date was Tuesday, August 21st, yesterday as of the time we're recording this.
As of the time we're recording this, we're staggering them out. This will be a couple weeks. So 2 weeks ago it came out, something like that. So it's available, so check it out. Are you comfortable saying what your initial print run was, or is that...
Yeah, we ran 5,000 copies.
Okay, so that's a healthy run. Especially without an offset of a Kickstarter campaign that you sort of already sold half of it or whatever. And has the performance of the initial buy-in done well for you?
Yeah, we had some airshipped for Origins. We sold out almost everything we had at Origins, and the initial ship to cover pre-orders was referred to as very, very, very good by Aldo. So we'll take that as it's. I'm one of those people. It's never as good as I would like, because I'm always hoping for the massive explosion, and we shipped them all, Dave. That's not going to happen, obviously. You always in your brain you want that, but it shipped more than anything we've ever made.
Sure,
so
I'm not at a point where I've sold and shipped 5,000 copies on. I'm no Keith Mateka. It's an overtime. You get a nice buy-in, and what it really comes down to is the re-ups. They got to the stores. The stores sold them. People liked them. They told their friends. Their friends went to the store, said, "I want more." The store, those are, and you're not going to know that for a couple months. Is it? So let's say things are going well. Pre-orders really good. Unit sales really good. If you sell all 5,000, are you at a point where you've recouped? Or, all right, great.
We also cut a deal with a company in China. They're running 2,000 copies translated into Chinese, and that's all. That's a good deal for us, because they're covering the cost of the manufacturing as part of our production agreement, and then they get to sell them at a really reduced royalty. It's like a localization deal.
I know. Yeah, all those sorts of deals. But what that does is it reduces the cost, and ends up offsetting, brings in some additional revenue, and they've translated it, which is great, right? And so, but then you're, as you get a sense of the sale velocity, then you're going to say, hey, do I reprint? When do I reprint? How many do I reprint?
Right.
I remember that was a really hard conversation. With the first time I had a reprint was Herbaceous, where it was like we didn't sell out again day one, but we sold out probably month one, and then it was sort of like, all right, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to reprint 2,000? I'm going to reprint, am I going to go big or small, and figure it out. So that you're going to face all these interesting decisions as you go. Okay, so, and just to wrap this all up, you are doing the small stuff. You're getting bigger and bigger in the small category, and then you try to go the miniature route, sort of hit a wall. You then bounce over and you say, "I'm going to go straight to the direct to retail," and it seems like perhaps that's going to land as a pretty good decision. You'll know, and we can come back in a year and you can be like, I'm not doing that again, or I've done 3 since then.
Yeah.
So from where you stand today, I mean, what's next? What's your horizon? Do you have any projects that are announced online? Are they IPs? Are they miniatures? Are they card games? Are they Kickstarter? Like, where has all this taken you today?
So we've got a couple things. The sequel to Force of Arms, which is going to be Robotech Crisis Point. Robotech is obviously 3 series strung together to make Robotech. So Masters and New Gen have always been under service. So we're taking the mechanics of the Force of Arms and taking them to the ultimate expression of strategy, tactical warfare. I have a friend of mine who's this crazy math genius that says the math's unbreakable. So that'll get people all challenged to try to break it. But we're going to do that. We're hopefully have that out by January. The art's already in progress. Rules are complete. Testing is done. And then hopefully by June or July, we'll do the final one, which is called Invasion, which is a co-op game. It's a true co-op based in New Generation part of Robotech. It takes some of the Nightmare Forest mechanics, but takes them to a much more, as you would say, evolved and sophisticated level to service that IP. And then we have one other thing we're working on in there called Quests, which is actually we call it a light hybrid between D&D and Choose Your Own Adventure. That one will probably end up in Kickstarter.
In Robotech or totally separate?
No, the 3 Robotech games are completely separate from the other thing.
Got it. Okay, so you're basically, playing the Robotech hand, and you had a sequence and series, so, everything goes well. You continue to sell the first, you do the second, that'll sell more of the first, and blah, blah, blah. You go down your line. And then you're still, hey, I got another idea for some cool weird Kickstarter-y game that's a little bit different, and I'm going to try that out and go that route and then see how that all goes. Cool, man. I mean, it sounds like you have a good plan. It sounds like, you're considering how you want to pivot. Now, this is the fandom plea pitch in your letter, which worked out. But like, do you see yourself sort of, hey, maybe we could do a different IP, or was like, no, you're like, I got the IP I wanted, and that's cool. I'm not really going to do this again.
We have had a couple we reached out for that where we got the really polite, go away letters, which, you try them but you're going to get them. There's 2 that we've had a couple of talks and they went well. We're waiting to kind of see. I can only do so much by myself, so I'm trying not to get where I get all these licenses that I pay for. They're running clocks, We were going to do.
Sorry to interrupt you, but for those who don't know, and my interview with Vincent from Lucky Duck Games was about 6 months ago, but we talked about this at length. When you get an IP, typically you secure it for a period, but you also are obligated to execute it within that period. And if you don't, you lose it. So when you said ticking time bomb or running clock or whatever you said, that's what that means. You can't secure an IP forever. You actually have to commit to. So in many ways, there's this challenge of one of the difficulties he faced was trying to get the IP and then design the game, and that crunched everything, and he moved more towards getting a design ready with maybe an IP or a couple IPs in mind, and then getting the IP, so you didn't have this big design window of risk going. But anyway, sorry to cut you off.
No, and that's kind of our license expires in July of 2020. That's when Harmony's up to get their license renewed as well. If they renew their license, we'll probably renew our license, and then we actually are going to do a deck builder and a tabletop war game. Won't be miniatures, but it'll be cardboard. So we'll split the difference between doing a tabletop miniatures game by using an ogre style cardboard system. So yeah, we were going to do Voltron, but the cost up front was we had a deal to get the license, but it was way too much for me to afford as a small company, so it was kind of a bummer. But people can get it. You just got to be persistent and have a plan and have a business plan and show them what you're capable of. And I think a lot of licenses can be had. You just got to be careful.
Well, and in a lot, and not every deal is the same, but in a lot of deals, it's being able to put your money where your mouth is and have that there. It's much harder to get a deal that has this presumption of value after Kickstarter, especially the more serious the IP is or larger it is.
And more IPs are Kickstarter resistant. They don't Harmony doesn't want to go to Kickstarter right now because of the stuff with the tactics, and they don't want to. And what it wasn't they were worried about the situation, but they didn't want people they were working with to hit a headwind that's left over from a previous situation. So they just wanted you to really, be capable of putting your money where your mouth is. And you see with like a couple of the other IP recently that had issues, companies are getting more and more wary of ever going anywhere near Kickstarter. So if you want to use an IP, you have to plan ahead, because you have the cost of making the thing, publishing the thing, and licensing the thing. And then that just it starts to push out small guys from being able to do it, I think. But if you have enough passion and a good savings, you probably can.
Well, hopefully you get those savings back. Cool, man. Well, I think we covered a pretty big range of topics, and you mentioned both Robotech now being available and then other titles in the works. Thanks for being on and talking about everything at Solar Flare Games.
Thanks, bud. It's nice talking to you.
Oh, always. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Cool. So now we do the part where I see if we recorded any of it. Hey, everybody. Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks. Bye.